we like to involve different people in leading worship and being involved in our service. And one of those ways is when people reach a certain age or a certain anniversary point in their life, that they're able to help in planning the worship by picking a song. And the song that we just sang was the song that Short and Alley Post picked as one that they wanted to sing because tomorrow's their anniversary. So thank you, Short and Alley, for that pick, and for allowing us to sing that song with you. Our scripture reading for this morning comes from Jeremiah 2. We'll be reading verses 11 through 19, and then we'll also be reading from Lamentations 3. Hear now the word of the Lord. Has a nation ever changed its gods? Yet they are not gods at all. But my people have exchanged their glorious God for worthless idols. Be appalled at this, you heavens, and shudder with great horror, declares the Lord. My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Is Israel a servant, a slave by birth? Why then has he become plunder? Lions have roared. They have growled at him. They have laid waste his land. His towns are burned and deserted. Also the men of Memphis and Tahpanhes have cracked your skull. Have you not brought this on yourselves by forsaking the Lord your God when he led you in the way? Now why go to Egypt to drink water from the Nile? And why go to Assyria to drink water from Euphrates? Your wickedness will punish you. Your backsliding will rebuke you. Consider then and realize how evil and bitter it is for you when you forsake the Lord your God and have no awe of me, declares the Lord Almighty. And then from Lamentations 3, verses 21 through 26. Yet I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So there were three men that went hunting one day. One was a doctor, one was a lawyer, and the third one was a pastor. They sat waiting in their hunting blind for what seemed to be forever before a buck finally arrived. And as the buck entered the clearing near where they were hunting, all three men drew their guns, they took aim, and they each pulled their own trigger. The buck dropped instantly. But when the three men approached, they could only find one bullet hole. They spent the next few hours arguing about which one of the three was the one who pulled the trigger. Finally, a game warden came by and he offered to solve this dilemma for the three men who'd been hunting. And so he went and he inspected the deer, and then he came back to the three men and he said with certainty it was the pastor's bullet that took down the buck. But how can you be so sure, said the lawyer and the doctor. It's simple, the warden said. The bullet went in one ear and straight out the other one. It could only have been the pastor. Now, I can't take credit for this joke, but it's certainly fitting with chapter 17 of the story. In fact, if you've been reading along in your copy of the book, and you've been able to keep up to this point, then I'd like to congratulate you. We're at a particularly challenging point in the story, and one that's maybe starting to sound just a little bit repetitive. By the time we get to chapter 17, God's messengers, the prophets, have been calling the people of Israel and of Judah to repent of their sins and to turn from their idols for the last 200 years. During this time, there have been a few good kings, but most of the kings have led the people astray. They've led the people to worship Baal and Asherah and various other idols. Now last Sunday, we looked at King Hezekiah, who with the help of Isaiah was able to bring about some reform and to slow the decline of the tribe of Judah after Israel had fallen. But this reform didn't last long. At the beginning of chapter 17, we read that Hezekiah's son Manasseh did evil in the eyes of the Lord, following the detestable practices of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He restored the high places, he erected altars to Baal and to Asherah, and he even sacrificed his own son to the fire. He did much evil in the eye of the Lord, arousing the Lord's anger. Manasseh's son Ammon followed the same pattern, and the nation of Judah strayed so far from God, but that by the time Josiah took the throne, the temple had been locked up and run down, and the people had forgotten that there even was a book of the law. Now Josiah brought about significant reform, but these changes only lasted for a generation, as the next two kings are both described by this common refrain. And he did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as his predecessors had done. All this time, God would bring word through his prophets, calling the people to repent of their sins and to turn from their idol worship. And this call to repentance, just like the passer's bullet, went in one ear and straight out the other. In some ways, it's actually surprising. Chapter 17 of the story reads a lot like the beginning of chapter 16. The fall of Judah closely mimics the fall of Israel, with both nations falling into and being punished for the same sin. You would think that seeing what happened in Israel would be less than enough for the people of Judah to keep from making those same mistakes. But somehow being taught to learn from their own mistakes didn't include learning from other people's mistakes as well. And so it seems that the people of Judah are worthy of judgment, the judgments that Jeremiah prophesied in chapter 2. Now, if you have your Bibles with you, I'll encourage you to pull them out and to turn to the beginning of the book of Jeremiah. If you need help finding it, Jeremiah comes after Isaiah, before Lamentations and Ezekiel. And I can't tell you what page it is in your Bible, but I'll give you a few seconds to find it. Now, if you scan over this first chapter of Jeremiah, it starts with some historical information, who Jeremiah was, where he's from, and then it tells you whose reign he prophesied during. It says the word of the Lord came to him in the 13th year of the reign of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. Jeremiah's career as a prophet lasted through the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, down to the 5th month of the 11th year of Zedekiah, son of Josiah, king of Judah, when the people of Jerusalem went into exile. So Jeremiah was a prophet to the very end of the nation of Judah. He was one that prophesied that the fall and prophesied that Babylon would carry them off. And then he was a prophet that saw this happen too. Now Ezekiel, another prophet, a contemporary of Jeremiah, was one who got carried off into exile with the people of Jerusalem. He was carried off to Babylon, but Jeremiah and a few others remained behind in Jerusalem and in the land of Judah. But before all this happened, Jeremiah is called by God to prophesy to the people, to tell them what's to come. The word of the Lord came to me, Jeremiah says, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Now, just these words on their own are words that parents might choose to commemorate their child's baptism, because it gives us great comfort to hear how well God actually knows us and how intimately he cares for all of our needs. But in the context of the first 2 chapters of Jeremiah, there may be less comforting than we want them to be. The Lord appoints Jeremiah to be a prophet. He touches his mouth, he puts his words in Jeremiah's mouth. And then the Lord tells Jeremiah not to be terrified, but but to stand up to the people, to say whatever the Lord commands him to say. And then God gives Jeremiah this reassurance. He says, they will fight against you, but they will not overcome you. For I am with you, and I will rescue you. Now, this is kind of like God's way of saying to Jeremiah, they're going to hate you. And they're going to want to kill you. But don't worry, when that time comes, I will reach down and I will save you. So God is reassuring Jeremiah, but at the same time, he's foretelling that the difficulty, the hard time that he's about to go through in prophesying to the people. And when we read what God wants Jeremiah to say to the people, it starts to make sense why they would want to kill him. You still have your Bibles open, you're looking at Jeremiah 2. It's set up like a court case. Jeremiah's first prophecy is the Lord bringing charges against his people. First of all, he says that they strayed from him. Then it says that they followed worthless idols. Then that they did not seek out the Lord, even though he brought them out of the land of Egypt and the land of slavery. He brought them into a rich and a fertile land, but they defiled and made his inheritance detestable. The priests did not seek the Lord. The leaders of the people rebelled. And finally, the prophets prophesied by Baal, and they followed these worthless idols. And all these charges that are listed in the first 8 verses of Jeremiah 2, and all these are ways that the people of Israel and Judah have turned their backs on God and how they have rejected him. And they're summarized in verse 13. My people have committed 2 sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water. And they have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Now I want you to picture this image for a minute. For us, a cool, refreshing spring might be a bit of a luxury item. But with water being piped into our homes, we don't really think about where it comes from, or what we'd do if it wasn't there. But in Israel, where they have a limited rainy season, and where much of the landscape is dry and arid, a spring of water would be considered a true source of life. Springs were rare in that landscape. And so anyone who had a bit of land would have to dig out a cistern, a kind of holding tank in the limestone. And they'd cover the sides and the bottom with a kind of a lined plaster that would keep the water from leaking out. Or at least it was supposed to. And then they would hope that the cistern would hold enough water during the rainy season to last them through the entire dry season. Only limestone is known to be very porous. It has lots of holes and places where the water can leak out. And the plaster that they used would tend to crack. And so it wasn't a rare event in that time that somebody would go out to their cistern and they would find it empty when they needed it to be full. And so the people of Judah knew the value of a spring of water. And in calling himself the living spring, the Lord was reminding the people that he was their very source of life. Without him, they would not only still be back in Egypt, but it's actually more likely that they wouldn't even exist as a nation. And to replace this living spring, the source of life with a cistern that didn't even hold water, made absolutely no sense at all. On a good day, a cistern might hold warm, dirty, or stagnant water, kind of like the water that Val had in the bowl with the children's story. But Jeremiah compares Judah's idols to an empty hole in the ground, good for nothing, useless. The only thing an empty cistern could do was to become a trap. And that's exactly what idol worship was. It was a trap. The people would become ensnared in their own sin. Now, if I were to suggest to you this morning that we are at risk of falling into the same trap, some of you might wonder how this could be. After all, I'm pretty sure that none of us has a statue of Baal in our closet that we'll bow before. Neither would we have an Asherah pole in our backyard that we go and pray in front of. We certainly haven't sacrificed any of our children in the fire. But I want you to consider this definition of what it takes to be an idol. I'm not talking about the popular TV show where people sing before a panel of judges and try to win the prize. No, an idol is anything that comes before our relationship with God. Let me say that again. For us, an idol is anything that takes priority or comes before our relationship with the Lord Almighty. For example, if you can't seem to find time to read the Bible, or to do personal devotions, or to spend time in prayer each day, and yet somehow you can find the time for Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram, then social media might just be your idol. If you have time to play hockey, to watch sports on TV, or to catch other shows but you don't have time to help a neighbor, then those things might be your idol. Even good things can become an idol. Homework, time with family, our hobbies, our jobs, our careers, earning enough money to support ourselves or our families. All these things quickly become idols when we allow them to interfere with our relationship or get in the way of our relationship with God. Now think about this last one, earning an income. It's key to surviving in the adult world. As our kids grow up, we want them to be able to support themselves. And eventually we'd love if they could support a family of their own as well. And so we encourage them to work hard in school, to go on to college or university or to get a trade so that they'll always have work. Or we spend time building up the family farm or the family business so that we have something to pass on to them. We make financial decisions where we should be making faith decisions. Young people, what would it look like to make a decision about your career based on God's call in your life, rather than what makes the most financial sense? How would you like to pick a career that doesn't provide a steady income, but that does show your faith, show your trust in God to provide for all your financial needs? If you make a choice entirely because it makes financial sense, then your career choice may become an idol as well. It's not just young people. If you're my age, or maybe a little bit older, it's possible you've started making plans for your retirement. Now, typically, retirement plans include making sure you're financially set so that you won't have to work, or so that you have the freedom to decide what you want to do with your time. But shouldn't the first question in planning for retirement be, how can I honor God with my retirement? Now, I'm just picking on a few of our idols this morning, but the truth is there are many. There are many ways that we choose our own path, and we pick the thing that makes the most sense to us without giving any consideration to what might make sense to God. When we do this, we engage in our own form of idolatry. When we engage in this idolatry, we find ourselves stuck in a trap. But even so, even as we find ourselves stuck, we can still find hope. The text that we read from Jeremiah seems pretty dark. On the surface, there isn't much hope at all. But even in the few verses that we read, there is indications of hope. Verse 13, which we read already, which we looked at, starts off like this. It says, "My people have committed two sins." Look at those first two words. My people. Even after all the accusations the Lord brings against the people of Judah, he still calls them my people. He never releases his claim on them. He never lets them go. He allows them to be carried off into exile. He allows them to experience the consequence of their sin, but he never truly abandons them. In the next few weeks, we'll look at stories from within the story that happened to the people of Israel and Judah while they were in exile. And these stories show God's care and provision for his people as they're hundreds of miles from the home that he gave them. And even as they are there, often exiled, they're never far from him. And this is the reason for the hope that we find in Lamentations 3. Now, Lamentations is a bit of an odd book. It was once thought that it had been written by the prophet Jeremiah, but now most scholars seem to think it was written by another author, one that we don't know. It's actually possible that it was written by not just one, but at least 5 authors. Because if you were to look closely at the 5 chapters of Lamentations, you'd notice that each seems to be written by someone else. The words used, how they're put together in sentences, each has its own unique style. I've actually heard there's one pastor made a claim that Lamentations was written by Jeremiah, but that he's quoting other people. You see, after Jerusalem fell, most of his people were carried off into exile, and Jeremiah remained in the city of Jerusalem. And he walked around the city, and this pastor believes that as he walked around, he recorded the laments that he heard from the other people that remained there, that he gave voice to their suffering. But in the middle of their suffering, they found hope. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Somewhere in Jerusalem, in the midst of the chaos and the destruction of that city, the city that had been destroyed, this voice of hope emerges. The living spring, the spring of life, could not be stopped. The Lord Almighty remained their source of hope. Jesus picks up this theme of living water in John 4. As he travels with his disciples from Judea to Galilee, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at Jacob's well, and he asks her for water. Then he makes this claim. He says, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become a spring of water welling up to eternal life. It takes time for the woman to understand what Jesus is talking about. But she persists, and so does Jesus. And Jesus makes himself clear. In fact, he makes himself so clear that by the end of the story, the Samaritan woman becomes the first Christian missionary in Samaria. People of God, Jesus Christ is our living water. He is the very source of our life. As the poet says in Lamentations 3, verse 24, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. There's a praise song by a group called Vertical Worship that's called If I Have You. And this song is loosely based on Lamentations 3, and I want to read the lyrics to the second verse as well as the chorus to you. It goes like this. I don't need to see tomorrow's plans. I just need to trust that you are working. I just need to keep you as the first thing. And then the chorus goes like this. If I have you and nothing else, I have everything. If I have you and nothing else, I have everything. If you know Jesus, you have everything. There's nothing in this world that you need more than you need him. And so this morning, if you don't know Jesus, or if you know him but he's not at the center of your life but he's off to the side, then I invite you to join with me in prayer and to ask him to come into your life, to be the center of your life, to be your everything. And if you do know him, if he is at the center, then I invite you to give thanks with me and to pray for those who need to experience Jesus in a new and a powerful way. Let's pray together. Father God, if we have you and we have nothing else, then we have everything. Jesus, you are our everything. And by the power of your Holy Spirit, you enable us to serve you with our whole lives and to keep you in the center of our lives. Lord, I pray for those this morning who don't yet know you in this way, who maybe have heard of you as they come to church, but they haven't had their lives transformed by you. Lord, I pray for that transformation. And I pray for each one of us who does know you, Lord, but sometimes we like to push you off to the side, that our own selfish ambitions, our own personal idols get in the way of a relationship with you, Lord. I pray that you may convict us of that, you may call us to repentance, and that you may empower us by your Holy Spirit to shine your light brightly, Lord, to keep you at the center of our lives. We give thanks, Lord, for the ways that you do work, and we pray that we may always follow